again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Koberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and today we're getting back into the Nancy Guthrie abduction. I have a special guest, a great guest, a returning guest, going to be joining us on the show here momentarily. We're going to get her professional insight. She's a former FBI agent and a wealth of knowledge when it comes to these type of investigations. So we'll be bringing her on shortly. But before we do, I want to remind you guys, for those that are watching the live show that don't know, I do have a morning show that's going to be happening now. It's going to be airing at about 5 a.m. on the central side, 6 a.m. on Eastern, about 3 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. It's called your True Crime to Go, your daily dose of true crime. And basically what I do is I'll talk a little bit about some of the cases in true crime that we've been covering. Tomorrow's is going to be about Chief Fry, an admission that he made in the Brian Koberger case. So you don't want to miss that. That one's going to be aired out in the morning at about 5 a.m. So without further ado, let's bring in today's guest. We have Miss Jennifer Coffindaffer. How's it going, Miss Coffindaffer? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
I am laid back tonight. I've got the casual outfit on, yellow for finding, hopefully, Nancy Guthrie alive.
I hope so as well. I want to let you know, if I freeze or disappear for a moment, it's because my computer restarted. It hasn't done it yet today. So there's a good chance you may have to take over, but I wanted to give you a heads up. Oh. So, we haven't talked about this case at all yet. And, I wanted to get your ideas and your thoughts. Miss Guthrie goes missing, mother of a famous personality, the co-host of the Today Show, Savannah Guthrie. What immediately goes through your mind when you hear, she's been taken and they don't know where she's at?
Well, I think initially, like many people, and I still feel this way to a degree, I always felt it was very close to home. And again, I still feel that way. I still believe this is somebody familiar. I still believe this is something personal. It was initially, of course, just like law enforcement always does, you start from the inside and work out. And so to me, it was critical to look at all the family and to try to get a read from the information we had on whether anybody could be involved. But that circle, in my opinion, I know some people don't agree with me, but I believe in working joint cases. And for 15 years, I was assigned to task force cases. I literally worked in the gang unit. That's where my office was. That's where my desk was. And with another department, I was right in their squad as well. So I could tell you on these cases, there is no way that the sheriff sent out that notification that the family was cleared without the FBI's concurrence. I don't think they wrote it because they don't write emotional like that, but they concurred on it. And I believe the immediate family is cleared.
I do too. I think that when it comes to an investigation, and I'll get your opinion on this, but I feel that there's certain things that a person has to do when it comes to a crime, like leave their house, return home, stuff like that. And when you have an investigation to this scale into certain people, in my opinion, if an arrest isn't made relatively quickly, like within 2 weeks, it's most likely a little bit further out from the inner circle. Not every time, but uh, is that the right or wrong approach to start to think like, hey, after a few weeks, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of cooperation, family members, unless they've lawyered up and not giving anything up, if they're cooperating and they're giving up the being cooperative, that's what sort of tends to lean after a while that they aren't involved. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. And so much more, right? Of course, you've got the polygraph, you have a complete scrub that's going to be done of their text messaging, their Google searches, their email accounts, anything and everything, Discord, everything was turned over to them. And so they're going to be able to look and see if there was some massive conspiracy that they were involved in to abduct Nancy Guthrie. In addition, you have, DNA, fingerprints, their tracking where they went pursuant to their car information, pursuant to their phone information. And like I said, if it were some big conspiracy, that would be likely laid out on their electronics. And I think all of them passed with flying colors. So I think they were clear.
Yeah, I do too. And there's a lot of stuff that's gone on. One of the things that has happened is, and it's continuing to happen, and TMZ, although said they weren't going to report on this anymore, has reported the very next day that they got another ransom note.
Did they make it 12 hours? It was something like 12.
Jeez. Yeah, they're like, we're not gonna talk about it anymore. And then I turn around and he's like, we got another note. And I was like, okay.
Just laughing. I have to laugh.
So do you think the ransom stuff that's going in through TMZ, does that sound more to you like just somebody trying to take advantage of the situation, trying to become a just kind of like the guy that they arrested? He sent text messages asking for Bitcoin as well. He had no involvement in the abduction, was just trying to take advantage of some people that were hurting and trying to get their family member back.
I fear that these notes that are all tied together, right? Because they kept using that same Bitcoin address. This one has a new address, but the same people. And now, of course, what they're saying is, we'll just give you information about the people that did the abduction. So ridiculous. Right. And now they're back up to almost 6 million, if, from the reporting. I think that it literally is to torture Savannah specifically. You get to a point when they did they did the ransom, went into 2 media outlets that were local, got no play because those media outlets didn't tell anybody. They just got them straight to the FBI. TMZ gets it, and of course, it becomes hugely public. I mean, they were getting 1 million views for these little snippets, even today, hundreds of thousands of views for even just the snippet. By the way, coming soon, we're going to talk about another ransom note. I don't know if you saw the morning. In other words, it wasn't really even one snippet. I posted it. It was like 4 seconds. Hey, everybody, coming soon. And then he did, the longer version, the 4-minute version. But nevertheless, this person wants play in the media. They would have never gone to TMZ. They expected the local channels to advertise what they did. And then when they didn't, my belief is 12 hours later, that's why it took that hiatus. They went to TMZ and they keep getting all this play and they love it. And I think they're just torturing this family and loving this game.
Yeah. I think it's a game to them as well. I don't think they actually have any involvement in the actual abduction aspect of it. For them to have contacted media, especially TMZ versus the family members, it's kind of the opposite of what you expect for a ransom type situation. Usually in a ransom type situation, the family is not calling the police because they don't know where their loved one is. Family's calling police because they just got a call. They just got a letter. They found something. They're alerted of the disappearance by the person who did the abduction. The fact that they didn't reach out to any of the Guthrie family members kind of leads me to believe that they didn't have their information, which you would expect them to be able to get from Miss Nancy Guthrie. And so what do you think happened here then? You know, you have a guy walking up, fully dressed up, has a backpack to the brim. You know, I know that the sheriff here recently has mentioned that he doesn't believe it was a burglary gone wrong. What do you think he's doing with a backpack, and what do you think is going on here?
I don't think it's ever been a burglary gone wrong. If it was a burglary, his backpack would be empty.
That's true.
I mean, his backpack is stuffed full. His pocket is stuffed full. Listen, this to me was an abduction from beginning to end. That was the purpose of that trip in there. And I really think it's just twisted. Now that we know for sure this isn't about inheritance, we know it's not about life insurance, and we know it's not about ransom money. Now, what are we left with as a motive? We are literally left with something cruel and something very evil that was perpetrated against Nancy and the family, and I think possibly Savannah as one of the main targets for this offense.
Now, in those situations where we've seen somebody get targeted, there's been something left behind, a message, whether it be engraved on a bullet or whatever the case may be. I know law enforcement hasn't come out with anything of that nature yet. Do you believe there's something there of that nature in this house? If this was, you know, for some sort of reason like that, you know, it kind of seems like the family isn't aware of why. Do you think that there would be a message left behind of some kind?
Well, it's kind of interesting you say that, you know, that the family might not be aware. And some of the more recent messaging from Savannah, she's really touched on a lot of poignant points, almost the way she speaks. You know, some of the things she said, which to a degree are the overarching message in the book she wrote, which is it's never too late. And she was talking about, of course, with God. It's never too late to find God, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting that she uses language, one direct quote, but the other overarching theme for sure from her book and her messaging to try to appeal in her last appeal. And also the fact that she's by herself now, she's not flanked by her siblings. When I look at all of this and the reporting that's recent from News Nation that she's thinking about leaving the Today Show, never coming back, because she feels, this is the reporting, her mother was targeted because of her celebrity, and having her on the Today Show made her vulnerable and known. You know, they went back to Tucson, and, you know, she just spilled a lot of personal information. And so when I look at all of that, I just wonder if she has any inkling, because I really do believe that this person has some familiarity with the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, that, or he's really done a lot of background into them. You know, with that being said, and the possible motive being something maybe Savannah has reported, is she? I'm not familiar with her work. I'll be 110% honest with you. In fact, I had her name wrong for the first couple of shows that I was covering this, because I knew who she was, but I wasn't familiar with her work.
I do it all the time. Sometimes I literally am thinking one name, and I bet this has happened to you, and you're saying another name, and you're why am I saying that name? So, you know, I think because we're talking all the time, sometimes the head gets behind the mouth. But anyway, Savannah.
What is she? What type of reporter is she that would make maybe somebody susceptible to an act like this? I mean, is she a, you know, politically moved? You know, does her reporting go one way or the other that way? Is it, you know, does she have a strong stance against something or another? I'm not familiar with her in that manner.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, on the Today Show and her work on that, her body of work is just, you want to fall in love with her. She's a ray of sunshine. She's so bubbly, just such a big smile, very right in some ways in terms of her religious affiliations, but in terms of her politics, and certainly her mother was very left leaning and actually very anti-Trump leaning. Nobody's talked a lot about it, I think, because she is a horrible victim right now. So and for me, I've kept it off, even though I know a lot about all this, because I just hate this becoming political. People are already trying to infuse politics into it. And one of the reasons I love true crime is because it should be bipartisan. Anybody on the left, anybody on the right should want to put bad guys behind bars and solve crimes and be advocates for victims. So that's why I love this platform and really what we stand for. And when people start infusing politics, it just ruins a case. So I purposefully haven't talked a lot about it, but definitely on the left political side, but also somebody, she kind of strikes me like, do you know, are you familiar with Jodie Foster?
Yes.
Right. Silence of the Lambs.
The actress.
Accused. Yeah. The Mark Twain. She was the girlfriend. I mean, that goes way back. Sorry, I'm really dating myself now. But basically, like the all-American girl, just the sweetheart. And do you remember Hinckley? I mean, attempted an assassination of a president to show his love for her. So I think certainly it's possible that this is somebody that felt, that they'd been slighted and developed a hatred. I think now we just have to really boil it down to what the motive is. And I think the motive will lead to who did it.
Well, I know that I think this was just reported recently that there was a uptake in Nancy's address being searched just before her abduction. And so, that's going to leave a digital footprint. I'm sure they're going through some things. One of the things that we've heard about is the glove and also some DNA. And now I think we've heard of some DNA inside of the house. Now, from what I've seen from the reports is that the DNA on the glove didn't match any DNA from inside of the house. I'm assuming that is from any possible suspected DNA that they believe belongs to the suspect, and also Nancy. And so if there's no DNA of Nancy on the outside of that glove, I think it's probably a nothing burger given the distance of where it was at. But the DNA on the inside, it seems like they're probably working that out now and submitting that into CODIS, and they're going to be doing an IgG. Now, IgG stuff is what caught Brian Koberger. Now, when they inserted, that DNA for the IgG, and to the point that it returned Brian Koberger's name, law enforcement had no clue who Brian Koberger was. I feel that that's going to be, if they're utilizing the IgG in this scenario here, I think they're stumped. I think they're in a place where they don't know where to go. Because if they did, they don't need the IgG. They can just go surreptitiously pick up somebody's DNA and go and test it. Do you feel the same way, that by them going down this avenue, this is most likely leading us down a path where right now, currently, they might be behind the 8 ball?
I agree. I think they know so much more than we know. I always say probably 90-10. And the reason I say that is just from being behind the curtain. There's so much information they have right now, and they've released very, very little. I mean, they talked about the glove. They did say there's DNA from an unidentified person inside and nobody related to the house, the family. And so they've given us a few nuggets, but believe me, there's so much more. I mean, what nobody's talking about that I want to talk about is that Range Rover. Why did they tarp the back of that? And how did they get a search and seizure warrant, a federal search and seizure warrant for it?
That's interesting. That's a good point. And they've released the guy. Here recently, we found out that polygraphs were done. Now, I assume that, some of the family members may have taken them. I'm also assuming that the person with the Range Rover may have been another person that has taken a polygraph test, and some of these other folks that were questioned. Now, just because their DNA may not come back as a match doesn't mean that they weren't involved per se. What are your thoughts on the polygraph test?
Well, again, I feel like my thoughts lately have been not popular thoughts because, I really do believe the family's cleared. And I know a lot of people in the true crime community don't want to believe that. And I respect that. When people say that on my platform, I always say, listen, you're entitled to what you think. I just work from a place of experience in these cases and working with the locals. And so that's why I feel very confident when I say that. And when I talk about polygraphs in this way, I feel very confident too. I've used them in every investigation I've had virtually. I've been polygraphed every 3 years for however many years, too many years to count, probably 20 years, something like that. I've taken a lot of polygraphs. I am a huge believer in them. I think I might have shared, some people might know about this story. I didn't used to be. I was the sort, I've read books and, we talk about it at Quantico, how you can beat the polygraph. And I won't go into all those details, but, you can beat the polygraph. And so Gary Steger, God rest his soul. And by the way, all my comrades are passing away, the people that, I worked with. It's so sad. Every year there's another one that's passed. But anyway, he says, you don't believe, come on down. And I'm going to polygraph you on something. And so, this was before. So when I first got in the Bureau in 1990, there was no polygraph requirement. It came later. And now, and for years, decades, you've had to get a polygraph to even be hired as an FBI agent. And then every 3 years, if you're working any sort of top secret or classified, I should say, it doesn't even have to be top. It can even be secret crimes. You have to have a polygraph every 3 years. So anyway, but when I first got in, I didn't get polygraphed in 1990, not until later, probably 93 or 96, something like that. And anyway, I'm making a short story long. He says, okay, put 10 numbers in your pocket and take one of them out. And so I did, or it was the opposite. He said, he wrote down 10 numbers. He said, put one of them in your pocket. I did. He said, get rid of the rest. He didn't watch anything I was doing. And in my mind, I said, okay, please don't say the number 2. Please don't say the number 2. So we go through 10 numbers and he tells me, say no to each one. And of course, in my mind, I've tricked myself. I've said, okay, I really have the number 4 in my pocket or whatever. He goes through, he gets done. He goes, oh my gosh, Jennifer, just hand me that number 2 out of your pocket. Of course, it was the number 2. He showed me my chart. My chart was like, it looked like it blew up. And so he said, let me just tell you right now, don't ever lie because you will fail miserably. So people who are honest people are always going to fail miserably. The people who can beat a polygraph, there's 2 main situations. One, there are some people that are pathological liars. They live their life a lie and they can beat a polygraph. And the other people are people who are on medications and different drugs can result in inconsistent readings on a polygraph. But for the most part, your average Joe, you cannot beat a polygraph. And I have never in all my years seen anybody fail the polygraph the wrong way. In other words, I've never seen anyone innocent that looks guilty, but I've seen guilty people beat the polygraph. So
really,
that was a very long explanation. I believe in polygraph.
I believe in it too. I think that, when you tie it with evidence, it's just a tool. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say it's inadmissible in court, and I agree. It is. Now, I think that if it goes in favor of the person who is taken to polygraph, I'm pretty sure their attorney would like to have that in court. I don't know how that would work, but I'm pretty sure that the inadmissible part is just on the state's aspect. But I digress. So do you think that the polygraph was a tool to clear, or do you think that they're utilizing it as a tool to maybe they have an idea of somebody else, maybe the Range Rover guy?
I think it's being used in all aspects on this deal. I can tell you every missing case I had, first thing to the parents, come on, you're taking a polygraph. And if they
Yeah.
refused, which I can't really think of a case where they refused. In every case, I was trying to think. I've had some refusals of polygraphs, but very, very few. Most of the time, and we all know this as agents, and I know what many people might say. If you're a lawyer, you're going to say, never take a polygraph. But I can tell you, innocent people are jumping up and down to take it. They take it and they pass it, and it's all good. And I think that's what happened here. I was going to say, by the way, polygraphs are admissible in New Mexico. 100%. They can be used in court. And
Oh,
in
wow.
about 15 to 20 other states, they are also admissible, but there's certain stipulations that have to be agreed on by both the defense and the prosecution. But it is really, really changing in terms of admissibility. I would look for it to hit more states to be fully admissible in the future.
There you go. You heard it here first. It's going to be admissible.
Already is in one state.
There you go. There you go. Now, I know that there was a guy named Luke. I'm not going to say his full name. He was the guy that was detained. Apparently, his arrests were prior to 2022, where they passed some sort of deal where they had to submit their DNA into evidence. His 2025 charge is pending. He's got quite a few charges as a guy that they looked into. You know, TMZ had reported that the SWAT raid subjects, that there's no link to her and the kidnapping. So, but TMZ has been reporting a few different things here in this situation. Now, they had a locksmith that went to the property not too long ago, or people are assuming it's a locksmith. I think it is as well. There was some, I guess, drone footage, caught a couple of guys walking in and out. Some of the internet folks ran the license plates on the truck, came back to a locksmith. Does this mean to you that they have, I don't know, they know how the person made entry? Are they utilizing these locksmiths to, or these CSI locksmiths, I'm assuming, because they didn't have any advertising on the truck. I would assume that you put some advertising if you had a business like that. Is it possible that they're looking for tool marks or DNA inside of locking mechanisms?
I don't think so. From that, only because I think the CSI crime scene folks would be doing that. They could be an extension of that. I found it interesting, the locksmith, license plate information. I'm always just so leery. Look, I love sleuths because I think they do a great job. But at the same time, I mean, I'll give you one example. Of course, this sleuth I don't think much of, but I won't name who they are. But there was this video that took place 5 miles away of basically a vagrant trying to get into something, vaping. And I mean, from the minute I saw that video, and it was sent to me even before it hit TMZ, and TMZ blew it up and everything. And I'm like, people, you're not on the other side of town, 5 miles away, vaping right in the middle timeline when at 1:46 a Nest camera is removed, and at 2:20-ish, a pacemaker disconnects. You're not over trying to cut through a yard with double backpacks, nothing matched, not the heights, not anything, vaping away before or in the middle of the biggest crime you've committed in your life. So a lot of this sleuth stuff is just garbage. It's just plain out and out garbage. But a lot of it is very good. It's just kind of, I tell you, some of the quieter sleuths, that's the stuff I really pay attention to, because there's some sleuths that might not have the biggest accounts, but they do a really nice job. And then, of course, I have a lot of sleuths I work with personally that I think the world of. Having said that, back to the locksmith, I'm really torn at why they are there. Daniel, have you heard anything? I know law enforcement has not disclosed whether it was a break-in or whether it wasn't. Certainly it wasn't from the front door, at least that I can see. In fact, I really don't believe it was from the front door. When I look at the back sliders, I can't see any break in there either. But there's another entry, obviously, through the garage. And I don't know. The question would beg, well, are they there to fix a lock that might have been tampered with? But my question is, aren't we on day 18?
Something like that. Yeah, day 18.
Yeah, it's the 18 days. I just can't imagine they took 18 days to fix a broken lock. So, locksmiths do a lot of different things. The family might have wanted the locks all changed. I could 100% see that. But we didn't get any footage from the front. And you have to open the door to change that lock. So I'm not 100% sure what they were doing there, if they weren't changing locks. But it's interesting. What do you think?
If it is a locksmith, I'd wondered if maybe perhaps there was a safe, on the property that the family didn't know how to get into, maybe that if there was, a burglary gone bad. Because, I agree the whole backpack being full is interesting. It leads me to believe that he may have had possibly maybe either more nefarious thoughts or intentions. But the locksmith stuff, maybe he was aware of who this person was, Nancy, and aware of her connection to Savannah, and possibly assumed that there was a financial aspect to it. I know it happened at night, and that's not really typical, but your victim here is an elderly person, and so she's going to be there throughout the day most of the time. So I don't know. I haven't ruled out that possibility yet. Just think it's unlikely.
The break-in part?
Yeah. I think it's like maybe a 5 to 10% chance. If they have a safe there and it was tampered with, that would probably lead me to believe that even more. But if they don't, and that's not the reason why they're there, probably not. Yeah, it's interesting. I wondered if there was something that broken, but I do agree with you as far as the entry point. I don't think it was the front door. And the things that we do know is that we have the camera disconnecting at about 1:40 something in the morning. And then a few minutes later, the camera reports that there's movement, but law enforcement indicates that they don't know if that's an animal. That sounds like an outdoor camera. And I'm thinking that's the good possibility that this is our subject walking around to the back to make entry in a different manner. And so the entry point is probably something from the rear, whether it's the back slider, the back door, or the entry into the back of the garage. I think that's where the guy entered into the home. But the locksmith, maybe they're looking for the locks to be tampered if they can determine that.
Yeah, and I like your idea about the safe. When I first saw them go in there, that was 100% my thought was the safe. And then I later have just dropped that thought because I just can't imagine somebody that was so close to her kids. It seems like she was very close, that they wouldn't be, and that they'd even be worried about that at this point, I guess. That's why I kind of dropped it. I was thinking, I doubt if they would send somebody in there. The only thing I could think that they would send a locksmith in there to do again is if there were broken locks to replace them. That makes a lot of logical sense to me, even though we're on day 18. Why wasn't it done earlier? But I can kind of see that, especially, they've got that squad car out there with a couple guys, but pizza guy's gotten past, pool guy's gotten past. So, maybe they wanted to resecure that house. That's the only thing that made logical sense to me, Daniel. I agree with you about the back, but I'm still not convinced that there isn't another player that went. It's possibly it was just this sole guy, but that's a lot to do. go in there. He's in there for some period of time, at least, people like to say 41 minutes. I think that's too long. That's just subtracting the disconnect time with the Apple Watch disconnect time. And he isn't even in there at that point. So he still has to get in. He still has to make his way to her. He still has to control her. I mean, Lord knows what else he did to her in there. Something to cause her to bleed. We know that, but it could have been far, far worse. And I'm just not convinced that there wasn't another person, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, that's all things are on the table for sure. I think he was trying to cover his tracks on his exit. How he was going to get out of there. That's why he was taking apart the camera, because he was already on camera. What difference is it if they caught him leaving? Now, to me, the way he walked up, putting his head down, and the fact that he was trying to disable the camera at that point, told me that he's probably walking from a direction that is maybe a misdirection. I don't think he came from that direction. I think he made it appear he was coming from the left towards the home. And so, with that said, the one interesting thing about it is it appears that there isn't any cars on camera that we're aware of. Maybe law enforcement is holding that information, but it sounds like, based on everything out there, that they don't have a vehicle on camera of this person leaving. How do you think they got out of there?
Well, so there's one picture where it just appears to me that there's a fuzzy block type partial object that I thought could be a car, but I'm 1,000% convinced he didn't throw her up on his back and walk out of that neighborhood. Right. There was a car. It's kind of like, in a sense, juxtapose this a little bit, the Karen Reed case, where you had literally a blizzard come in the middle of a crime and, dump 20 something inches or whatever it was. It was a lot of inches. It might not have been 20, but it was a lot. And, whiteout storm conditions, freezing cold, ice, blah, blah, blah. That played as much of a role in not being able to get a conviction in that case as this is playing a role, the darkness, no lights, the fact that this was a light pollution neighborhood. And for those of you who have lived in one, you know what I'm talking about. I lived in one in Texas, and the sky is pure black, and it looks like the Dances with Wolves scene where you just see stars because you can't have a porch light. You can't have any lights on. And so it's so black. You could see the sky light up every night. And I'm sure that's what it was like there. But the problem is you can't see anything. It's so dark on the streets with no lighting at all. Not even your porch lights are allowed to be on.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. That's insane.
I think that's what's really hurt the camera footage. That camera that was on top, remember they went back and got that on search 3. I'm keeping track of searches now. We're up to 5. On search 3, they took that camera off, and they actually had the camera. And some cameras have, depending on the models and the years, have hard drives. Unfortunately, it appears this one didn't, because they're peeling back the layers, because it was written on and then written over many times, and they're trying to get back. But you would think if they were able to do it with the porch camera, that they could do it with that roof camera. And I think that could be the huckleberry to figuring out the car.
I hope so. The only thing is that the porch camera was disconnected right afterwards. And so there's not going to be a lot of layers on top of it like the outdoor cameras. However, law enforcement just recently were seen outside of the neighbor's house looking at the cameras there. Day 18, they're finally out there. Do you feel that law enforcement in this case so far has somewhat dropped the ball?
Well, I think that what they were looking at actually on the neighbors was a motion light. And I think they're trying to figure out, could they figure out when that light might have illuminated? Does it keep track of something like that? Which would be good to know. right? Whenever that light went on or didn't go on. So I'm not convinced it was particularly a camera, but to your point, an electronic device that day 18, they're finally looking at. Look, you know, I say this all the time. No one wants to be Monday morning quarterback because there is so much going on in this case. But in this case, there are a lot of mind-boggling decisions that were made. And the number one thing was that dang crime scene. It's like I can't describe how perplexing it is. I know they were in there 20 hours and they said they thought they got everything. Well, they didn't get the mat. They didn't take the Ring camera holder. They didn't, take the car. They didn't find the camera on the roof. That's just to name what we know about. And we saw the FBI coming out with all sorts of stuff. They didn't search the septic. That was on search 4. So it made absolutely no sense to me. Cordon off the place until you find the person. As simple as that. Just put up your crime scene tape. I know it's a manpower. It's a body that you got to have out there, or 2 bodies you got to have out there. But I'll just never understand that, because legally, I think whenever they do find this guy, this is going to be a big legal issue.
It definitely could be. One thing that we do know is that there was blood outside of the front of the house. That blood belonged to Nancy Guthrie. It appears to me that there is a misting or a coughing or a spray in the blood that is an indicating that she was fairly close to the ground when it happened, because the cluster of the spray is very close together. And so, and I think there's some droplets that are leading away, and then they disappear. And so the only assumption is that she got into some sort of vehicle at that point, or in something. I'm thinking that there is a possibility this was an abduction for ransom or something, and then something goes bad, and that's why they don't reach out to the Guthrie family. It's just mind-boggling, like the things that are going on with the IGG. Well, you know what? Before we go there, cartels have been, something that have been spoken about. Could they have had some sort of implication? Again, I think that usually when cartels do something like this, there's usually a message left behind. That message is pretty clear. Doesn't seem like they have a message here. What do you think about the possibility of cartels and the possibility of Ms. Guthrie being in Mexico?
Mexico is a possibility. Cartel, bzz.
Yeah.
This is nothing like a cartel hit.
I agree. Why do you think that there's a possibility she could be in Mexico, though?
I think it's a possibility. They're just so close to the border. There was another case that I've highlighted actually twice now on my Twitter. It's the same case. There was a businessman, I think it was in 2017, so it's been a little while ago. It might have been 2019. I'm just going down my memory. Businessman, doing his own business, and he gets tailed and followed. And then they follow, apparently, his GPS. So they GPS track him. So put some sort of tracker on him, and they kidnapped him. And all they did was kidnap him and throw him in their trunk so close to the border. And then they took him across the border, kidnapped, and immediately, though, asked for a ransom. And they asked for a ransom immediately, as I said. It was from family, and it was for, I think, $30,000, that is all cartelish, right? Grab the person, stick them in the trunk, drive across the border. They don't have to worry. They're not coming into the U.S. that you can't get into now without an act of God and all your papers in order. You could go to Mexico. The Mexicans don't care if you come over. They love it when you go there and spend money. Yeah. So, but they threw this guy in the trunk, and the FBI and the Mexican officials worked, and they had him back, I want to say, within 3 days, maybe right around 3 days, as I recall. They arrested 3 guys involved in it that are still in jail, or in prison. And they saw that lickety split because it was a normal situation. Steal guy, put him in the trunk, run across to Mexico, give a note, make a ransom demand, collect the ransom. That's the type of case that is normal.
Yeah.
This is so not normal. And that's why I say this is not about money. That's what I think. I'm just going off of what I think. This is, to me, way more brutal, way more sadistic, way more freakish. I think everybody's trying to look at something that's going to make sense, and I'm just not sure we're going to see that.
You know, I don't think this is the first time that this guy's broken into a house. I think he's probably broken into several houses. I think he's escalated up to this. But do you think this is the first time he's done something serious? Do you think this is a person that maybe has taken the life of somebody, or has abducted or tried to abduct somebody in the past? I do think that there's a possibility this person has broken into a house and maybe tried to assault somebody. I wonder if he has, and it's just not been reported, and they don't have a DNA in the system. Because if you remember, I think it was the Maureen case where they were able to find DNA from a guy who had sexually assaulted somebody else that he had broken into their house out in California, and then goes out and commits another crime similar to that. So do you think that this is
Rachel Morin, the Morin case?
Yes, Rachel Morin. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that the person that's committing this crime, is this the first major crime they've committed? Do you think they've done something like this before or something similar?
I 100% agree with you that typically a guy like this isn't his first rodeo.
Mhm.
I know people might say, yeah, but look at Brian Koberger. Listen, Brian Koberger was a fledgling serial killer, in my opinion. Like that's a whole different situation than this fool. I think this guy has likely committed all sorts of smaller crimes. And then here we are, the big kahuna. I've always believed that I just don't think this is just him. I could be wrong. We have so little information. It was so fun being behind the curtain, because then I'm holding all 50 cards. I'm holding the other 90% of the information. And here we get to deal with 10 cards, not a full deck, and try to make educated, hypotheses and reason through these cases. So it's frustrating. There's certain things I feel like unequivocally I know the answers to. For instance, whether the FBI knew that the sheriff was going to say that they were, the family was not involved. That I unequivocally know how that works. But when you're talking about this, Daniel, we don't get to see all these cards. So it's difficult to know, but I would just be surprised if this guy hadn't committed crimes before. And I'd also be surprised if he's not involved with somebody else with this deal.
I wouldn't be surprised. I at first was skeptical to it being an abduction, kidnapping, but obviously as the evidence and everything has come forward, it definitely appears that it definitely is that. Somebody went in there and took Miss Guthrie from her home by force. And this is just a scenario that I'm just shocked with all the resources that are at the disposal for this case, that they it seems at this point law enforcement are still waiting on some answers, maybe perhaps from the DNA, and they may at this point have more questions than answers. Are you any concerned? The chief made a statement saying this could take months, could take years. Are you any concerned that this could become a cold case?
It was weird when he said that, and I watched him say it. It was almost, let's face it, God bless him. And I know everybody just wants to blame somebody. It's so interesting watching on social media and YouTube and just all the comments. Like, it doesn't matter. This guy could come out and say, everyone, I think the world of you, and I think we found Nancy. And everyone would still say, what a schmuck, what a piece of crap. Like, it is so moved. That needle is so far in the direction because he's spoken so much and misspoken so much. And I think that was a misspeak. I think it was just kind of a, yeah, this could take tomorrow. It could be tonight. Remember, he said it kind of like that. It could be a week. Hell, it could be a year or something like that. It could be years. And to me, I saw it as really flippant, off the cuff. But to your point, Daniel, you know, your question is, could this become cold? I don't think it's going to become cold. I really don't. And I'll tell you the big reason why. There is a piece of crap walking around right now that knows exactly who that is on the porch, and maybe more than one. Parents, siblings, kids that are like, oh my God, that's dad, because they have seen that mask around. They've seen that backpack around. They know by the way he walks, they know those skinny little eyebrows and that faint mustache, and they know that one eye barely goes in a little bit. They know that he wasn't around during this time frame, and that's why this case is going to be solved. And it irritates the heck out of me, Daniel, that whoever that is has not come forward, because that guy is easily, if that were my husband, I would know that that was him. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's him. Somebody knows, multiple people know, and nobody is coming forward. I want to, you know what I want to see? I want to see Savannah throw down $1 million. So now we'd be at 1.2 million. And I bet you some relative is finally going to say, yeah, that's who this is.
You would think so. I mean, I know that the reward has just been increased to $202,500, as you mentioned, and we'll see if somebody bites. You know, so this person that's been reporting to TMZ claiming that they know who the guy is. Well, here's your money. Here's your money. Your money's there for the taking. Report it to the FBI, and you got $202,500 minus probably some taxes and some questions to be answered, I'm sure. But you know, there's your money there. You know, I hope they come up with an answer soon. I think that it's going to end up leading up to, you know, as you mentioned, somebody breaking, you know, family member or maybe even an accomplice, or the IGG. But I do think that this is going to get solved. You know, I think it took 7 weeks for Brian Koberger.
46 days.
Yeah.
And right now we're at day 18. So the sad thing about this, that Brian Koberger, unfortunately, tragically, we had 4 deceased individuals, but he took somebody that, at least as far as we know, was alive. Oh, I wanted to make a comment about the blood. And it's interesting because Sheriff Cullum, who I love, crime scene extraordinaire, and you know, lifelong, 40 years, I think, in law enforcement. It's funny because she thought the same thing as you. She actually thought that that was from the nose dropping. You know, the nose drops, like, got slapped around some, and that's what that was. And you just said you thought it might be coughing. I think she might have said that too. You know what it struck me was that when he stopped, that she had drips coming out of her. Obviously, we could see that drip. Yeah. And how I took it is that when he went to pull that door, because if you look at where they are, when he went to pull that door and he had her, because I believe he was carrying her, that it all drops, boom, 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 now in one space for several seconds. And that's what caused the spatter. And we both talked about that, and I could see it being either way: a cough, or a sneeze coming out, or possibly her just being in that position and that blood dropping for numerous seconds and causing that spatter to go out. Yeah. But I agree. I mean, I think she was carried. I certainly don't think she walked out of that house. Is that what you believe too?
I think she definitely had to have help. It sounds like mobility was a big problem for her. late at night, bleeding from something. It would be very difficult for her to be able to maneuver a very long distance, I would assume. And if the injury was to her head, then that could be any, even more issues. But, if we play that scenario out, he goes in there, it's taking her away, she gets hurt. Why continue to take her? Like, he didn't ask for a reward. He didn't ask. I mean, I'm assuming the TMZ rewards and ransom notes and things of that nature are just a scam and somebody trying to take advantage of the situation. Why take her? Why continue this?
Well, that's what I guess my point is that this is bad. And
Yeah.
he was in there for way too long. So I fear, excuse me, what she went
Bless you.
through in there as well, to be
Well,
honest.
They did say that they found DNA inside the residence. They didn't
Yeah.
mention what kind.
They didn't
And
mention
so, and that's one of the things that, I was talking with my buddy Steve from True Crime Web. He's a former CSI, and he brought up an interesting point. He said that, the motive could have been a lot of things, for why that person went entry, including, an assault. He had his bag packed up to the brim for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what was in it. He brought a weapon with him. He brought a gun. Is it, in your opinion as well, that this person doesn't seem familiar with guns based on the positioning of where he put the holster and things of that nature?
Not at all. That gun didn't fit that holster. I really think he kitted up for this. I mean, I can just see this guy at Walmart going, yeah, I'll take one backpack, one holster,
Mm-hmm.
Throw in her book, which, by the way, Savannah's books, both of them are sold at Walmart.
Oh, wow.
So, I've been down that rabbit hole a bit, but I don't know. Right now, I'm exploring the possibilities now that the family's out and money's out, right? All that's out for reasons. So we just need to forget about money and we need to forget about ransom. It's out. So now you're looking at, why do you take an 84-year-old woman with you? And I tell you, it's interesting, Daniel. I don't think the notes are connected from the standpoint of it coincides with this person trying to get money for her. But I tell you what, they both are doing the same thing, and that's torturing the family. The
I agree.
physical taking of her and this note writing. And, when you look at all of that, I'm down the rabbit hole, if you will, of that this is something really sadistic and of a stalking type nature that led to her being targeted and purposefully abducted. And it just seems real dark to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much possible that this guy could have some sort of infatuation with Savannah and, use the mom to get to her, and this could be one of those just sickos that has this weird fantasy, and there could be a lot that's going on here. I know go ahead.
I said, yeah, I know, because we're getting down the rabbit hole, if you will, of making some suppositions about the facts we have. But at this point, we have to figure out the motive. Now that money and inheritance and ransom is off the table, as you just asked me, what other motives are there? And they're all real dark.
They are. They're very dark. And that was one thing that concerns me. I mean, you have blood leaving the residence as well, and that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign at all. Do you think, and this will be the last couple of things I ask is, do you think that we'll find, if Nancy has succumbed to whatever's gone on, because it's been a while that she's been gone. I don't know. I know that there's been some reports out there from search warrants that medicine may have been taken from the house. to keep her alive. It's been a while. If she's succumbed from the, man, I forgot where I was going to go with that. I know that if she's succumbed, I do remember.
Say, let me see if I'm reading your mind. Were you going to say if she had medicine and is she ever going to be found? Were you going to ask me?
I was about to ask you, do you think we're going to find her remains or find her before we find the suspect?
If she's in Mexico, no way. If he threw her in that trunk and drove across the border, we're never going to find her. I doubt. I let me just put it this way. I think it's very, very bad proposition.
Yeah.
If he didn't take her across the border, now we're looking at Arizona. I don't know if you read that post, but I did a post of, I think, over 4,000 bodies have been found in the desert in the past many years. In the past, I can't remember the date range. It wasn't long. It was like 9 years or something. 4,000 bodies, people. And I know everybody's like, oh, yeah, but those are the illegal aliens and they come over and they die in the desert. Yeah, no, I don't think that's all of what we're looking at. The bottom line is the desert has always been and will always be the perfect place to discard a body. And if you look at the terrain and the pictures, I've posted a ton of them on here that are in and around her place. I've taken a lot of the footage. I always give them credit, but of all the photographers that have done a lot of a job, videographers, and it is so desolate. And the wildlife out there, the coyotes, the pigs,
the javelinas, the hogs.
And all the rest of the wildlife and the horrible temperature situations. I mean, by this time, the body would be completely desecrated. So, if she's on this side and if she's passed, I think we would find possibly some remnants, maybe. If she's in Mexico, I don't think we'll ever know.
Yeah. I think you're right there. Spot on. What do you got coming on the rest of the week, Jen, for everybody?
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a busy week. I had 3 shows in one day, which usually I have 3 shows in 1 month. But every morning I do a special highlight on this case. I call it the morning report. It's usually between 7 a.m. and about 8 a.m. And so I'll do it's only about 20 minutes long. And I know we've done this show tonight. I may just air this show tomorrow morning because we've touched on a lot. But I usually every morning from now on until Nancy's found, I'm going to do a show with the highlights. And that's really all I have going on. I have 3 shows I'm just working on. I just reached out again to Elizabeth Smart's family through somebody that I know very well. I work with them in the women who have been abused and assaulted, sexually assaulted. And she talks with Elizabeth Smart every other day because she works for Elizabeth Smart on several projects. So I keep reaching out to her, and that's kind of the next one I hope to get on the show. Tim Tebow's another person I'm in contact, trying to figure out a time to have him on. So a few shows up my sleeve, but I'm not sure when they're going to hit.
There you go. I also have a morning one as well. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the Brian Koberger case and a admission from Chief Fry that just made the news recently. And so you don't want to miss that. That's going to air about 5 a.m. One last question.
Cliffhanger.
One last question. FloJo TV has a great question. It says, if they find evidence that she was trafficked across the border, will the FBI take over the case and make it federal?
They might. And I say that because we saw this happen in Luigi Mangione. Mangione case was strictly a New York case. And then the minute that he was found in Pennsylvania and crossed those state lines, bam, the federal government whopped in, and now they're both fighting on jurisdiction. It's so ridiculous. You have the federal government trying to get things adjudicated before New York can. And New York had a trial date and they moved theirs up just to beat the federal trial date. It's honestly makes me just want to throw up, because it's kind of like the bad podcasters who just want drama and they want to make fun of other channels and they don't do any research, and they're horrible and they're not in it for the right reasons. And then you watch a lot of channels that are in it for the right reasons. When I see law enforcement or the judiciary, prosecutors fighting over who's going to be first, they have lost their way. That's my opinion. You've lost your way when you can't just get together and work on a case. So that case makes me mad. Oh, and by the way, in New York, Luigi Mangione, his DNA still isn't in CODIS, by the way. In New York, it never goes in unless you're convicted of a crime.
Wow.
And several other states too. So even though there's 26 million profiles in CODIS, there are millions and millions that aren't in CODIS. So it's not
True story. True story. Well, if they do, I think it'll go federal as well. And I anticipated being prosecuted to the fullest. I want to thank you, Miss Jennifer Coffin-Deffer, for joining us again. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Please hit the like button, subscribe. I have Breaking the Case linked in the description. If you're watching on Jen's channel, please follow me. You can either find me on the Drunk Turkey Show or DT Show. I'd appreciate that. And again, I'm going to be airing out a show at about 5 o'clock on the Brian Koberger case tomorrow morning. You guys have a great night. I'll be back live sometime this weekend. Don't want to miss it, so ring that notification bell. See you guys then. Peace out, y'all.
Daniel, thank you.